Probably. All right. Good evening.
Hey.
This is
Good evening.
good evening. This is a meeting of the Council Rock Finance Committee.
Finance.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Facilities Committee.
Are you still in my committee?
Open the wrong meeting.
Facilities. Real quick introduction.
Welcome back, Mike.
My name's Mike Thorward. I'm the chair of the Facilities Committee. Let's go around the table and introduce ourselves.
I'm Jerry Grupp, School Board Director,
I'm Wendy Thomas,
Chair of the Finance Committee.
Chair of the Finance Committee.
Barry Desco, Director of K-12 Education.
Sue Elliott, Assistant Superintendent.
Ed Tate, School Board Director.
Matt Frederickson, IT Director.
Denise Brooks, School Director. Nicole Bellick, I'm part of the Leadership Academy.
Anybody else?
Better guess?
Mike Fitzgerald.
Chuck Lambert, Director of Special Services. Gary Casey, Member Area.
Stephanie Barry, Harris, parent.
Warren Garrett, PE Engineering.
Colin Page, Student Engineering.
Doug Taylor.
Take it away.
Chris English.
I thought you were trying to be quiet.
Courier's here. We want people to know, right?
No other paper showed up to this festival. Come on, Doug.
It's been a long day for me, can you tell?
Replace the controls and take some.
Good evening. I have a couple items to go over tonight. Energy management, report on how we're doing from an energy standpoint, facilities improvement, brief update on it, capital improvement projects update, board agenda items, master capital planning. And I will say on the master capital planning piece, all of that is just to let you know that we have a meeting next Monday in the boardroom next door. That's really the extent of the master capital planning discussion this evening. If you're here for just that discussion, I don't want to hold you up for that. The energy management update, we're doing good. The Energy Star score is at 82. Our energy use intensity is at 52. Our cost per square foot is at 93 cents a square foot. And in comparison to where we were, our Energy Star score has improved by a point. We're down 2 cents on the cost per square foot, and our intensity is down 3, which is a good thing to be down.
Just so people know, give an approximate square footage we're talking about here. 2 cents doesn't
That's
seem.
1.7 million square
There you
feet, right? So there's a lot of square footage. Yeah, a lot of money. On the retro commissioning efforts, we have Goodnow Elementary School nearly in check, and we're seeing improvements in our monthly energy reports currently from the efforts that we've put forth. Recently, we had another meeting in the middle of February and got things in real good shape. So just a couple little adjustments to go, and we'll be great at Goodnow. Our monthly meeting we have with our HVAC specialist, we have an ongoing list, we bird dog all of those items. Some of the things that we're working on, we're relamping corridor lighting at North with LED lamps. Better cost, and the lighting is actually very good from the old lighting that we had. We're investigating water reduction opportunities just to see if it's worth looking at a water reduction plan district-wide. Not sure or not, but we're going to dig into that. And planning for the, the education of our staff, getting back in front of the staff in the district. It's been a long time since we've been in front, we talked about it. We're going to wait until we get into the beginning of the next year prior to find an opportune meeting to go to and talk about the parameters of our HVAC controls throughout the district. The removal of personal appliances, which have increased tremendously. There was a time when we really cut back on those, and they're starting to grow, and a lot of those observed throughout the district. And creature habits, just reminding people when we leave rooms, simple things like shutting down lights and things like that. So we'll get back in front of the staff and re-educate. Facilities improvement update. The Newtown Middle School project and Holland are in good shape from a progress standpoint. I share a monthly report with you that Dewey helps me prepare. And we're still waiting for the land development agreement from Northampton for the Northampton project. It has no impact on what we're doing. We just don't have the formal document in hand. We continue to chase that down.
Do you need help?
Our solicitor reaches out to them occasionally, and it's not hurting anything.
Okay. If we
It's a
need to make a
formality.
little bit of noise, we
Yeah,
can make some nice noise and just say like, we're
I
waiting.
think we're okay. I mean, there's nothing.
I offer two, Wendy. I think
Yeah.
that is- that-
I don't think we need
Yeah.
to ruffle any feathers. We'll
No,
just wait
no.
and see. Security camera purchase for Holland Middle School. Now that we have a phase in place, we're working on the next phase. It's time to get the cameras out to the site, and we use Access Security as our vendor to assist us with that. There's about 89 cameras. We no longer use PTZ type cameras at the corners of buildings. We use 2 or 3 fixed cameras that capture that image always, so that the cameras are always pointed in the appropriate direction. It's almost the same cost to put 2 or 3 cameras on the corner fixed as it is to get a PTZ. So it's cost effective and better functionality. And a server with this project. So the cost of the Holland project is slightly higher than the cameras will be for Newtown down the road, because the server that we're purchasing will serve both of those projects when the other project is done as well. It does include the installation, the electrical contractor roughing in all of the locations. Then Access Security will come out, take a look, make sure that all the locations are appropriate for where we're aiming the cameras. We've had several meetings. They will install commission program.
Do you anticipate, we've had, at some of our larger projects, the high school rebuild at north and south, we had, I remember south, we had to have a guard at one point patrolling. And so I wonder if there's any opportunity to do some interim installs on the camera work to get them in as the site's still under construction, actually part of the site security before it's completed, and then we may have to reinstall them. But we've hired guards at past projects because they're large, inviting, and because we're of the public we serve, kids like to get involved in this.
We have some off the back of the Newtown project that see the site. Holland, we may have
There was one out.
1 or 2, nothing at the job site proper.
It would be
We do have
difficult.
some on the exterior side.
Yeah, well, sometimes you put them in a little link with a wireless link rather than a wired link. And that's, I think you're keeping our arms battery of things we might do, because they're large sites, and trying to get one patrolman to walk around on the lot gets to be a challenge. And we tend to see that really around the end of the school year is when we have our biggest problem with that.
The ACE grant for LEED Gold certification, we continue to receive payments from them. The payments are still where they were the last time around, almost $800,000 to Holland Middle School and $435,000 to Newtown. When we hit $2 million in each project, the payments will stop, unfortunately, but it is found money. So that is an actual payment to us for achieving LEED Gold, and Dewey's working hard to make sure that we meet the LEED Gold, or Warren who volunteered to pay us the $2 million back for each project. So, as I said, both projects are on the schedule. Just a couple of quick shots of the progress. It's tough to really appreciate it from the street. The massing is great. We made great progress with this good weather. Steel continues to be erected. We have metal studs in place. We have floors poured. We're providing space for the contractor to get in, but there's spray fireproofing in. We have some temporarily enclosed. They're actually putting walls up in areas. Really good stuff. Here you can see the spray fireproofing efforts. Inside, this is the new cafeteria. Moving along. This is another section of steel. This is the auditorium steel going up. And this is a shot from the courtyard. You can see some of the massing in the courtyard. Holland Middle School, we occupied the last phase in January. The next 2 phases will be occupied this summer. We'll be finishing the classroom addition and the next phase of the renovations, 1st and 2nd floor pod. Those are the classrooms built off the side of the building, facing the woods that you can't see down through the athletic fields, off to the side. This is an area of renovation in the existing building, the next set of pods that we turned into conventional classrooms. Here you can see one of the existing columns that's been removed to free up square footage in a new classroom, so we have a functional space. This is the elevation that you can see from the bus drop, and the stair tower has now been enclosed with glass, and the metal panels to the right will eventually look just like the section on the left. It's a good shot of what's new and what's new and what was. This is the auditorium construction going up in the back of the building. You can see the elevated section of the auditorium. One section of it. There's two more sections that go in that will also serve as large group construction spaces. There'll be partitions that separate those.
Before you move on, because these guys are back here, and I want you to hear, I'm hearing from kids how great those new rooms are. Not parents, from kids, how well lit they are and how nice they are to learn in. So just, ultimately it's you folks that are hands-on. I want you to know that, I'm getting texts and pictures from actual students.
Let's get some good news too.
Yeah. So.
Thank you. The next item pertains to the name of these two facilities, and I know that this has been discussed at the February board meeting, and kind of the next step is, where we're headed with it. I have some information here, just so you know where we are, what our needs are to get this information. We talked about this after the last meeting, and I know it went to the Courier Times relative to the estimated cost of the project. To change the names, the construction cost impact is somewhere between $10,000 and $30,000 per project. To make a name change, uniforms and miscellaneous materials is around $77,000 per school. So it's around $87,000 to $107,000 per building to make the change.
Let's frame that too. Particularly in the uniforms and miscellaneous materials. A lot of the acquisitions for the past couple of years, which might have otherwise replaced that expense might have been spread out over a period of time, not so much in your space, Doug, but in the area of uniforms and other equipment that we would have bought over time. We haven't spent that in the anticipation of the changes of name, at least for
Holland.
For Holland, right?
True.
True account would be an additional expense that would want to.
Doug, I just want to clarify. The administration had never made a recommendation to change the name of Newtown Middle School. So if we continue with that school as Newtown Middle School, there is no construction cost impact. There is not any uniforms other than any additional we would need. Correct? I mean, because it's just, when you say per middle school.
Newtown should not be an issue if we're not changing the name.
Okay. And if we were to continue with Holland Middle School as the name of Holland Middle School, we're incurring costs?
There could be costs because the contractors have not submitted for the site signage, for the letters, for other components that go on the building. Some of the building controls that have started to be programmed are programmed under Holland Middle School. So there's things that Johnson may have to go back and change.
But if you don't,
Because that
So if you
slide,
don't change, no, if you don't change it, it's fine, but there could be costs for increased material costs for some of those things that contractors have held up on in our direction.
Just
okay,
inflation.
because I just want to clarify, because if anybody's watching at home, when you have that whole bottom of that slide where all of these things say per school, the reality is that the primary impact would be Holland Middle School because that's where we've been ambivalent. But if nothing changes at Newtown, other than what we supplement in case we have a higher enrollment, there is no added cost.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And to further clarify, you're still awaiting our decision on Holland Middle School.
After the last meeting, I'm waiting a decision on both. Because the last meeting I heard there was an interest in changing the name of Newtown Middle School. So I need to know if there's still an interest or not, and then I need to know what the name of Holland is.
Right.
so we having that discussion tonight? No. When are we scheduled to do that?
So, great segue.
Second.
So the school board final decision, we talked to the contractor, so what is the absolute date you need to know so you can get materials and be ready to go?
Oh,
They said, hey, by the end of May, beginning of June, we need to know what's going on so that we can order materials that'll be a year before the projects are supposed to be completed. Essentially, we need to know. We need to get the stuff. It could be 3 months, 4 months to get the material, so get us the direction by then. To do that, working backwards, we would need the direction from the board by the end of this month. We only have a meeting on the 16th of March. So I don't know if you can get us direction on the 16th of March, but that would be ideal. But by the end of the month, really is necessary, because then the architect has to take whatever name it is, look at it on their renderings, make sure that it fits. It could be longer, it could be shorter, I have no idea. They will look at that, they will look at all the site signs to make sure it fits within the design of the site signs as well. They will issue those sketches to the contractors, who will then come back and utilize the next 30 days to get us pricing from those vendors, come back, get us change orders, and then we'll review the cost. And I come back to you and tell you what those costs are. But we would be able to give the contractor direction by the end of May to move forward.
Wendy, I had envisioned maybe on Monday making this an agenda item. We only have 60 minutes for this meeting tonight. And, you know, it really wasn't advertising discussion of naming.
That's fine.
So I envisioned it, advertising it for, as part of Monday. We need to talk to Andy and Robert.
Yeah, I think,
To be
At our
fair,
last
my
board
guess
meeting,
is
we
it'll
said
be
that
at
the
the-
discussion on this would be tonight. At our last board meeting, the meeting
Yeah, that's
ended, and I
what
asked where this was, and the
It was.
discussion was that it would
Right,
be
well, I was
discussed.
in the hospital, so I didn't catch
Okay.
that stuff. Well then, let's get through his presentation, we'll circle back and discuss.
We can delay the next meeting a few minutes.
Yeah,
Sure, I don't have a lot on
Yeah,
here.
I know he doesn't have much
This
to
is the biggest
read.
item, as far as I did.
Yep.
Capital improvement projects, as we know, there was $3 million approved for the projects for this summer. We are on task to receive bids next week, and then bring the results of those bids to the board meeting for the 16th board approval. And then begin to get the contracts executed, procure materials so that we're ready to go come June, to wrap those projects up on time. I don't have all of the bids in yet, but as I said, on the 8th, I get the rest. I do have some. We've seen some significant savings on, we saw some significant savings on the roof at South, about $733,000 below the budget that we originally planned for. Part of that has to do with some value engineering we performed relative to how we're going to put this coating on the roof. The system generally has we prepare the existing roof, repair the seams, take care of any wet insulation, which we're still doing. The original concept is to put a fiberglass sheet down, a reinforced sheet, then you put a white coating on like a paint, except it's a very durable product that lasts 10 years and is warranted for 10 years. The alternative to that is you prep the roof, do all those other things, but instead of that reinforced sheet, you put the reinforcing actually in the paint. It's fibers that actually go into the coating, and then you apply the coating, and it still gives you the same warranty as the other does. So it takes a big step, big piece of labor out of the roof. On a project that big, there's a significant savings. So we were able to do that, still get the 10-year warranty, get a white coating that's also an improved roof from a green standpoint. The other numbers we'll be getting back. I do know that the North Natatorium tile repairs, we added another stair tower. There's existing stairs to the locker rooms that have not been touched since they were put in place. Maybe there was some tile put on the existing metal stairs that's all broken up. They're really bad shape. Since then, another stairs become problematic. The student was actually cut a foot on one of the other stairs, so we added that to the project. So that will likely be slightly higher. Emergency roof repair bid came in under as well for Soul Finestone. And we did get the numbers for the chillers. We talked about the chillers a couple months back. I said I would actually finalize those proposals. So we talked a little bit about the project cost being in the range of $550,000 if we were to competitively bid the job, bring a professional in to bid the job, replace the chiller. For both chillers, we're looking at $415,800. As a savings, if you do both, at around $20,600 on the phasing and logistics since they're there. I think what we do is I would recommend both, but let's collect all of the bids and see where we are overall, and then we can make a decision at that time. I can give you an option at the board meeting. Select one or two.
Even if you did them, you would be within your summer budget.
Exactly.
So to
That's
speak.
that's what I'm hoping. Originally, I said we'd have to increase the summer
Right.
budget.
But
But by finding some monies, we will probably be below and not even have to worry.
By finding some money, you mean about $700,000 on that roof project. That's really terrific. That's
Yes.
very commendable. Thanks, Doug.
Sure.
We're thanking him for overbidding. For overestimating, I mean, what do we, I'm joking.
That he deserves a lot of
You
credit.
can't win for losing, okay?
You can if you don't cough.
Be a slow meeting if you didn't speak.
Well, thanks, George. So, the natatorium walk rack investigations, what I will say to that is we had an executive session. We continue to move forward. I've had ongoing meetings. I've seen progress, and at some point, we'll regroup with you and update you again on where we are with things. But I've seen positive direction on it, and I'll get back in front of you on that. So, board agenda items, the public bids for the bids I talked about, which are the irrigation at the high school, the roof projects, domestic piping at North. We have some domestic piping issues to the kitchen, so we have to run some new piping from the kitchen back to the boiler room, and the natatorium tile as well, and then the roof projects and the chillers. So I'll have all of those numbers in order. We'll have a summary of the overall cost, and we can make some good educated decisions at that meeting. I think we'll be in good shape. Renaming of the middle schools is potentially on the agenda right now, so I'll carry that until we finish discussing that tonight. And the security cameras for Holland Middle School are also on the agenda. I'm holding off on the Newtown Middle School cameras because we still have plenty of time. Technology changes, so in the event something does happen between now and then, we'll have an ability to change the camera type.
Bearing in mind, Mr. Gross. Comments earlier.
If we have free up, space that we can put cameras in and
Yeah.
start to see things, then we'll make sure we have cameras there. Even if we have to install one temporarily that we have in stock, so we can, not a problem. And again, the master capital planning piece is just to let you know that we have the meeting next Monday in the boardroom, 7 o'clock. Targeted full-day kindergarten will be discussed, and I'll be discussing the potential repurposing of the Richboro Middle School. So we're ready to go. We're excited. Hope to see the community at that meeting. That is the agenda.
Well, let's circle back. And Denise, I cut you off earlier. So please, I mean, if you've got.
At the end of the last board meeting, we said the discussion would take place now. And so I don't want to push it off to the next board meeting where we will have just another conversation like we had. I mean, we might as well have it now, right? True.
Yeah.
Look, all I'm gonna say, I'm not gonna go through what I went through last time. I'm gonna say it really pointedly. Like the president, don't like the president. Those of us who watched the State of the Union on the other night couldn't help but be moved by the outpouring of support for Karen Owens, the widow of a SEAL, Navy SEAL, who was killed. I think everyone sat there, looked up, and watched this person who was there because her husband was killed in the service. And I don't think anybody looked at her as an individual. I think everybody looked at her and said, well, that's somebody who, even the family, made the sacrifice for the country. I just find that an amazing contrast to what happened in this district at our last board meeting when we proposed someone locally. So I'm not going to advocate it because I won't go through it until I know that I have 6 people supporting it. But I just found it an amazing contrast to what we experienced here, to the outpouring of support for Karen Owens with the death of her husband in service.
I don't think that's necessarily a fair comparison, but I understand the spirit of it.
No, I think it's absolutely fair when I have a board member sit at a board table and say, hey, we got money for other ones, isn't it fair? Which basically characterizes that the people that we had suggested naming the district's buildings for died without having a lot of money. Yeah, I think it's bad.
I don't think that that's.
That's what the words
Okay,
were.
and if that's the characterization you had, that's fine. I didn't hear anything at that meeting that characterized it that way, but that's fine.
Well, that's because
I
you were
think
talking, that was your voice giving the.
That was not, I did not say that. What all I've talked about is process. That is what I've talked about, and having a fair and reasonable way of naming a building. I don't think, it's not like if somebody's making a speech and in the moment you can pick the most timely person to name for, which I think is what you referenced. For me, it was about making sure that we were not overlooking anyone. I mean, even respected individuals in the community said that very same sentiment in the newspaper, and I've had those conversations with other people. I don't think there's value in criticizing each other for the positions that we took. I think the proper thing to do here is to determine what we want to do. If there is board support to develop some kind of process or come to some agreement, that's great. For me, I've been disappointed with how we have approached this. I asked for a naming policy. I asked for this to be discussed in committee before it went to the board meeting. I asked for it to be a discussion item, to be discussed before we had to vote for it. And I think at this point, we are not really in any different place than we were 2 weeks ago. And I think it is in our best interest to leave the names of the schools as Holland and Newtown for now. And if we want to readdress it later, we can do that. But that's what I think is best, because I don't think that nothing's changed for me that we have not had a proper approach to it. And particularly because the approach that we did take was to assemble nearly 200 people to agree to names, and we're completely dismissive of that. So to me, it just feels very haphazard. The deadline is looming, and we have 2 weeks to figure it out. So for me, my comfort level is to just leave the names as they are, and we can address that later.
Wasn't, the 200 people came up with a different name for Holland Middle School.
Northampton.
Northampton.
Right, but they're actually, I mean, I had the conversations, each of the schools came up, it wasn't like that was the unanimous choice, it was done in buckets.
Yeah, I believe
So the
that.
interesting tidbit that I found from Dr. Frazier was that the leading name for the school from Richboro Middle School, the one community that we were perhaps the most sensitive to,
Correct.
their number one choice for the school was Holland Middle School. So, I mean, if the board is interested in Northampton Middle School for Holland Middle School, I would certainly support that. But I'm also equally as comfortable as just saying we can discontinue this for now and bring it up again later. And the issue of the lessons learned of how to name, there are other ways that we can be talking about in the opening of these buildings to honor exactly what those sentiments are. That aren't the name of the building.
You're looking at me, Mike, I'll talk.
It looks like you're ready. So.
I'm just listening. You know, obviously, I've thought a lot about this in the past 2 weeks, and I went back to the facilities meeting on January 5th, and I reviewed it a few times, and I even had it transcribed. Because I walked away from that meeting, and first of all, when we started the discussion, I just felt like I was absolutely in the twilight zone. So I'm not being critical of any individual board members. I'm worried about the general process and how this board is functioning. Because looking back and listening to the facilities meeting, it was very clear that we had a discussion about Northampton Middle School, and Newtown was mentioned a couple times. You know, I've got some quotes here. And at the end of that discussion, Mr. Grupp talked about the thoughts he had about renaming it after someone significant in the community. I think it was Mr. Block who said, well, we don't want to put, I'm paraphrasing, we don't want to put this back on the administration because we're out of time. Someone else said, we're out of time. And we're out of time to find anyone to donate money. We don't have the time for that. But if a board member wants to look for someone of significance in the community and come back to the board with a recommendation, then would anybody want to volunteer for that? And I think my exact words were, I don't want to step on Mr. Grubb's toes, but I'll be happy to take the ball and run with that. And I don't want to exclude Newtown Middle School because I think that there's an opportunity for a learning opportunity and to recognize someone significant in the community. But Dr. Thorwart said, I can envision a 30-day extension on this. And you specifically said, selling naming rights, you're not going to be able to do that. And Mr. Taylor said, so it's going to bounce back to the board. There's other conversation. I think it was Mr. Block made another comment, and then Dr. Thorwart said, okay, we'll take it, we'll address it. Mark will run with it. Actually, let me find it. So what I'm hearing, you have a 30-day window. Mark will look into this. We have the votes for Northampton. I really respect the amount of work and what the students and staff put into this. We'll close it off at February's meeting. So essentially, go look to see if there's other opportunities, come back, and we'll discuss it. My impression of that board meeting was, in the comments of the members, and first of all, it shouldn't have even gone to be specific motion items on the agenda. It should have been a discussion item, and it should have been a discussion item about the renaming of Newtown Middle School and the renaming of Holland Middle School. For crying out loud, without the men's names on the agenda. It's a horrible breakdown of how this board is operating, and that's my concern, my main concern. So what happened was, Mr. Grubb and I took the responsibility for it, but Mr. Grubb stepped right in and came up with a gentleman's name from Northampton, and then when we presented it, like this came out of nowhere.
It was actually presented a month before.
Well, yes, and you did mention it the month before, and I tell you, I was gritting my teeth, Jerry, because I thought, oh, we weren't supposed to present this until February. We really haven't had a chance to talk or coalesce around anything, and I was working on this issue with Officer Greg, and Jerry and I hadn't even talked about it. So I thought that was premature, but you know, I was thankful that you now, in retrospect, that you brought it up and kept the ball rolling, so nobody said, oh, we didn't talk about this. But folks, we did talk about this. I did exactly what you told me to do. Come up with alternative names and deliver it at the meeting. And then everyone act like, well, this is too hasty. This was done without process. We should have looked at other people. Mr. Block was the only person who called me and said, hey, why don't we consider this person? And then the person he referred to, he didn't even remember the person's name. Not to diminish Mr. Block's input, but nobody else offered anything differently. And then we came to the board, we delivered, and frankly, we were treated like, hey, you went off and did this on your own, and then you presented at the board meeting. Boy, that was irresponsible. Folks, I'm a vet. You give me a mission, I'm going to do it. And that's what I did. So, and we had other missions, right? We're going to vote on the closing or not closing of an elementary school in June. We're not completing that mission. We don't know when that's going to be. This board is saying we're going to do things, and then we don't do them. And we're doing them in a completely wrong way. So I got to tell you, volunteer for another task to take anything. And I think everybody can fairly say that if something needs to be done, I don't have a problem stepping up and accepting the challenge. Right, Wendy, I did it for you a couple times with Finance Committee. I did it with this. I've done it with other things. The leadership is horrible here. Horrible. So we need to do something, and we need to follow and for ourselves and moving forward, and for the community to do what we say we're going to do. That was a huge embarrassment for this district and this board by not being willing to recognize these people and then handling it the way we did. If we would have just been able to not have an illegal conversation, but if somebody would have said, Mark, there are not 5 votes for this, you wouldn't have heard a complaint in my mind anywhere not to put that on the agenda and to see if we could do something. But to list that on the agenda as a motion item that was going to be heard and voted on, and then those 2 people had to be voted or not approved, and thank you, Jerry, for offering to table that. It's terrible, terrible process. And I hope that everybody that had comments, or everybody on that board that night, went back and listened to that facilities meeting, because there was no question of what the charge was. And I also hope that newspaper went back, because I don't think it was accurately reflected in that article.
So that leaves us with a conundrum now, though. We have to get this done. It's a collective we here. We have to, you need March 31st, which means, unless we're calling a special meeting for naming, it's in 15 days, 13, 14 days. So we have a motion on the table, Northampton. Denise had suggested Holland, leaving it at Holland. I was concerned it was too rushed. Bought ourselves 30 days. You know, you went out and did it. And I apologize for not making the Thursday meeting, but now we have to do it. So.
Well, listen, I don't want to interrupt you, Mike, but
No, go ahead.
I do take exception to that. I was concerned that it was too rushed. Because again, at the end of that, just please let me finish. At the end of the facilities meeting, there was a zero objection around the table. And that should have been the time. February 16th was the deadline, and if anybody objected to that, then they should have said something then, not at the February 16th.
Okay, I'm just going to say that.
Denise, you did object in the beginning. Yes, sorry.
Well, I just want to say that also, I may not have objected strongly enough at that moment, but I thought that it would come back to a discussion. And
Yes.
you know, and you have confirmed, I made it very clear that I was uncomfortable with how this went down. And so when it came up at the end of the meeting that we're going to talk about it, I thought we would have an opportunity to talk about it, and we did not. And that's what that contributed to.
When?
What? I had asked for it to be a discussion. The way the schedule had laid out after the time that it came up about the specifics of names, I had asked for it to be in a committee meeting. And that was unable to happen. I specifically said I didn't think it was appropriate to go directly to a board meeting and have our discussion take place around the vote. And it did not happen. And I made it clear, Mark, you know that I was not in support because of all the things that I know. And so that is the conundrum that we're in.
Did you say that when I brought it up as an item to be brought up at the next meeting, a month in advance? Did you have that discussion? Did I offer to look for the minutes? At the public board meeting, when I said I was intended to bring it forward at the next meeting, I'll look through the minutes to see if you made that same objection then, because it was on the table. Truthfully, I heard from, I think, one board member who said they would have a problem with it. Nothing else, crickets. Crickets.
Well, I thought I would have an opportunity
Well, you
to talk
didn't, so
about
I
it.
brought it up, you didn't.
Oh, I thought I would have I had asked for it to be brought up in a committee meeting, and I thought we would have the opportunity for discussion.
And after you asked for that, it was brought up at a board meeting, and you didn't comment on it then.
No, my request for it to be at a committee meeting came after that board meeting.
No, it didn't.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. I asked for it to be at the first week of February, this finance meeting, and then as an alternative, it would have been academic standards, which ended up getting canceled because of snow.
I don't have my calendar in front of me.
Mr. Forward, does the public have a comment? I couldn't do one.
Not yet, please. But yes, you will get a chance to comment. I assure you that. I haven't heard from a couple of members.
Yeah, I expressed my concern about renaming Newtown Middle School previously, and I still feel that, number one, that was never one of our necessities, and I still don't think it's necessary. If we do rename Newtown Middle School, it should be done with community participation. There doesn't seem to be a lot of unanimity around changing the name Holland Middle School to Northampton Middle School. I thought that was I thought it was a good recommendation that we got from the administration, but I'm not sensing a great deal of support for that name change. So I think it's reasonable to go forward for now with maintaining both Newtown Middle School and Holland Middle School as the names. I think that's a reasonable compromise.
I think the issue at hand is what we do within this window.
Yes.
However, at some point, we do have to talk about the elephant in the room in terms of how we got here. So I would say, if you think for one moment, I can only speak for myself, that I didn't go home that night and feel horrible. I did. We all saw that agenda ahead of time. We all saw names on that agenda. All 9 of us are responsible for that. And all 9 of us should have spoken up. I, myself included. I had reservations, I didn't like it, and I did not speak to it because it was there at that point in time. So shame on me, but shame on all of us for allowing that to happen. We did a disservice to those families, and I couldn't agree more.
I feel the need to interject and say that I did make a suggestion to reword those motions. I did reach out and ask for that.
To say that, to ask that the names be
I asked
removed?
that the motion appear on the agenda for Northampton, because that was what the administration recommended, and that would have allowed a discussion we could have voted that down, and had the conversation that I was hoping to have relative to the names.
Right, but we still had names on the agenda.
But
We
I had
still
asked for it to
impacted
say,
these families.
for the record, I'd like to say that I had asked for that motion to be framed as Northampton Middle School in the motion, not with names of people.
Okay. So shame on 8 of us. I don't know what to say. I'm just simply trying to make a point,
No, I
Denise.
understand.
We have to figure out 2 things here. We have to figure out what we're doing right now with this particular item at hand, and then we have to figure out how to improve our process. But I think we are all collectively guilty of process.
Absolutely.
So I would leave it as it is for the moment.
Mrs. Thomas?
So I wasn't at the January meeting. Not that I didn't understand that there was some sense of it. There was some talk about money here, so just to be clear, when I brought it up on Thursday night, my sense was when I talked about this a year ago, I feel like it was definitely over summer because I was trying to get people to do it. So it was over a year ago. I thought that committee that I was trying to get a couple of committee members to do was to go out and look for money for a name. So it didn't mean that these families needed to put money forward to have it named. I was just saying when I operated or tried to operate a community committee, that's what I was under the pretense of. That's what I told the people who came forward. So I did not vote for either of these families because there was no money involved. I was simply saying for me, like everyone else here, this process has not worked well. I have a little bit mixed emotions about leaving as it is, but for peace of the board, I would likely go with that. I'd prefer to name it Northampton and Newtown, for the record. When we turned it over to the administration and they went and asked parents and kids, it feels like to your point of the process doesn't work. We've asked communities for committees on planning 3 years ago, didn't take one of their recommendations. Maybe we're slowly getting there. I don't want to belittle what the board does do, but we went back. My fault. I had the naming committee that didn't work and said the administration should take it. We had the administration go, ask parents and kids, whether they all voted for it or not, they came back and now we're not going to listen to it. I feel like this is a precedent with us. We go out, we ask the committee, we ask the community or some section of it to give us something back. And when they do that, we simply reject it.
Right.
So for me, and particularly because they have not done a lot of stuff with Holland Middle School, if they had already gone down that path and there was money involved, I'd probably feel differently. But I would do my preference today. I'm fine to say we should look at a policy committee and then we should, just for the sake of naming, not for the sake of raising money, and look at, and I said it the other night, look at every school we have in the damn district. I would be fine to have that discussion and come up with a process and a policy to move that. But the issue at hand, I would prefer Northampton and Newtown.
So may I say one other thing?
Absolutely.
In that scenario, which I agree with you completely, the question I would have and the question I'm wrestling with is, if this is something we're really going to pursue in a reasonable time frame and commit to pursuing, to spend the money to change to Northampton, if there is a thought process that we would change that in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, or 1 year's time is my reservation.
I would bet my life that the amount of work this board has to do, there's not a human in the world that believes that we could get that done before the uniforms wear out. My opinion. So if I thought we had the capacity or the ability to do that in an effective way when we're not redistricting potentially the whole district, closing buildings, repurposing major projects, hopefully running a school and doing PLCs and educating children on the side, then I would be in agreement. But I look at what this board has before it, and that doesn't even speak to all the budget, all the things that are coming down our way from the state, and to deal with all those. This would have to become priority number 2, which pushes all, including academics, down, and I don't prefer that. If there are, if it's Holland and that's what we have consensus for as a group, I'm not gonna scream and jump up and down, but I just want the board to think long and hard about going to the community, asking them to sit on something, give us a recommendation, and then just say, oh, thanks for your input. We decided to do something completely else. Seriously, like we have, this particular board has a reputation, even those of you who are new on it, I hate to say it, but this board has a reputation. And there's sometimes a good reason for that. We have new information. I'm not saying we can always just do but this is a simple thing. We asked a group of people, they made a recommendation. They live in the community. Really? Now we say, I don't understand that.
I wrestle with 2 things. One is I agree with you in terms of Northampton. A subset of the community has spoken.
A subset.
But has spoken. But to these 2 gentlemen, I completely agree with honoring every man and woman who has served their country and died, or whatever criteria you want. And I wrestle with a single name, and I'll always wrestle with that. And so Northampton, Holland, or whatever. Personally, I want to find a way to honor everyone. If that's a wall, if it's a plaque, I know that's kind of, but we need to, and there is some educational significance to doing that. And I really sincerely mean all, and it's not to detract from the 2 that were selected in any way, shape, or form. And I didn't help you, and that's what was selected, and I get that's fair. So longer term on this process, whatever the will of these 9 people is to do here is one thing. But moving forward, I mean, we've started down a path where, in my mind, and it's the right path, we need to honor all these people somehow. And I know I spoke to you privately, but how do we do that? And that is something that still fits in the purview of this construction project for sure. So I'm torn. I mean, I hear you, I hear everyone, but we got a harsh deadline. And Doug, I don't see any wiggle room in that. If we're gonna do this in the time frame that, these are custom jobs. I mean, we have to make up our mind now. Look, we dropped the ball. I mean, it's fun, that.
From my perspective, part of the reason for proposing a name that I did, or the way I did, and I can't speak to Mr. Violets, but I think there may be some, aside from honoring these people, I would prefer not to give this community yet another way to create. You have to name schools, it's an unfortunate thing. When you name them after geography, you create another way to differentiate the communities. And so I just want to make everybody aware, we have north and south. So south will in essence be the Newtown High School, because everybody from Newtown Middle School will go.
Northampton.
So Newtown will be north, and Northampton will be south. So we will brand our communities and our schools by our communities, and we're one council lot. So we can't get away from it. So, yeah, you have to can. We could go back, and I think, someone spoke at the board meeting and said, hey, they used to be called white, blue, and 1 and 2, and, that was, again, lost educational opportunity. I'm not gonna live and die on this one, I appreciate, we name things after other people, but they don't get the play that the school does. It doesn't get the name on it that the school does. No one sits there and goes, where do you go? I went to Julia Ward Howe Elementary School. The schools in my district, I've sent people notes. They were named after Markham, he was a poet. They were named after Foster, he was a composer. Mellon, he was the Secretary of the Treasury. Then we had Washington, Hoover, Lincoln, and Jefferson. We kind of went back to the old names because they worked. Those were just transitionary names because they didn't really associate any community. There was no geography to them. And that's one of my concerns. I don't live, and you know what? I've learned to do, in a couple of years of doing this, the board makes a decision, we move on, and we move on. But I want to say that splitting our community by geography again just makes it, I just think it perpetuates it. Well, that's what I was hoping for. Having said that, you're going to wind up settling on something. For that reason, you might as well stay with historic names because they were the historic names, and at least you can justify them saying there's continuity. Sorry to the people in Richboro, but I think Wendy or Kyle said, hey, that was the most popular name. Maybe it was that was the most popular name for the kids at Richboro. Fine, they got their wish. Then leave them as they are for the time being. And you know what? The answer of one, I'm disappointed for lost educational opportunity. And when someone comes up with $170,000 and says, hey, look, I can fund all the, it's not me saying this, I can fund all the uniforms, everything else, and we'll change it. If it's no cost to the district to do it, and we think it's appropriate, we'll do it. But we do need to move forward. And I am letting go of this like the reluctant guy holding onto a piece of rope, at about the fall. But we need to move the district forward. So I would, with all contradiction, but all respect, Wendy,
There's enough people that want
to
to
stay
do
with
Holland and Newtown.
as they were and leave the possibility, because I would feel worse to rename them and then have a transitionary name that happens, even if it's 3 years later. I would feel bad about that. So I would suggest that we go forward and we'll just bite the bullet and say, keep them as they are.
I'm going to speak for Mr. Block, and then we can keep talking. Andy had pointed out he would prefer to have buildings named after a person or group of historical significance to the area. But if he hears a desire of community overwhelming in favor of something else, fine. He said he could be persuaded to vote for Northampton Middle School, but he doesn't like the fact that another school has exactly the same name in the adjoining county. And he can imagine places where someone punches at Northampton Middle School into a GPS and goes to the wrong one. So I won't answer for Andy, but I would think Andy's going to lean in
Doesn't sound like he's going to vote for either from that comment.
No. So can we get alignment then? I mean, just looking around the board, because there are enough, we're not taking a vote. Would anybody strongly object to remaining the names as they are today, going forward, of the board members here? We're trying to figure out how we get off the dime and move forward.
Okay. I mean,
No, I'm just, he's asking, I didn't know if you were going to object.
What he said, does anyone object?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to look at you.
We have to do
I
something.
didn't mean it that way.
So we have to do something. So
No,
there,
and we do. We have to do something, and we have to do it
and
soon.
there are 6 of us sitting here who have enough to go. So I think that,
I think the motion.
Do we need a motion?
no, we're not making a motion.
No.
We're not making a motion. We're doing
Ultimately, we
we're doing
will have to
informal.
make a motion.
No, we're
Because
going
legal names the same,
to,
you don't
we
need a
need to
motion.
have a motion at the next meeting if
We
we're
don't
not
need,
changing
I don't
these
think
names.
so.
You don't think so? Okay.
So then,
Barry, did you have something to add? I mean, okay, all right.
it's tabled, it doesn't have to come back.
Stay tuned.
All right, so I would ask then, Doug, you seem to have direction from 6 members of the board, and no one has disagreed for preserving the names we have now.
So do I?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
until next time.
Until next time.
I'm not counting myself.
Yeah.
I'm an idiot.
All right,
Okay.
Might be a good idea that we clarify that at the next televised board meeting.
yes, I agree.
that could be a discussion item.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, the press is here. I almost think you should, whatever,
Well,
there
it's an
should be some
advertising-
kind of announcement, because there's people,
It's an advertised meeting of the board, we can actually vote, we actually can vote here if you feel like it.
well, we should let
You
them
don't
know.
have to.
No, we
We said we don't have to vote, didn't we?
No,
Yeah, it was the same thing, but we're just saying we should announce because people know it's in turmoil.
Right.
But we should,
We definitely, if board's done, all right. Public comment, please state your name and where you're from before talking.
I'm Stephanie Marriott Harris, and my overall observation is that you do, and when you made this point, you all do come out to the community for different topics to ask for input, and then when that input is disregarded, it feels like, why, and who are you serving? And so, I don't want to debate, you said it very eloquently, but that's my overall sentiment. This is the third item I can think of in recent times where that has happened.
Others?
I had,
Nancy has.
Yeah.
Nancy Carroll, Newtown Borough. 3 items. First, I've been reviewing my favorite document, which is the CIP plan, that big book. I wanted to know when it will come out again.
I'm sorry, what is it?
When's
Capital
the
improvement
book
plan.
come out again?
The book was just,
This is 1617. In my
the
hand.
book is issued every October.
Okay, so this is.
Annual.
Secondly, I've been noticing that as I compare the schools year to year, we're getting more 7 items that need repair. And I'm thinking that $3 million is not cutting it, because we're allowing a lot of 6 weighted items to go up to 7 weighted items. And when I look at it overall, it looks like supreme neglect to me. And we had a fund balance for years and years and years that was close to $30 million, and we're letting these schools get farther and farther in disrepair. Comment. Second of all, I agree with keeping in Holland and Richborough, mainly because the kids at Richborough were, that was their choice, and they're the people who we're trying to accommodate.
You said Holland and Richmond, keeping it
I'm
Holland and
sorry,
Richmond. No, I just want to make sure your
Thanks,
comments are
Thank
accurately
you.
reflected.
Thank you. I often do that.
We all do.
What?
We all do.
Yeah. And third, at one of the meetings, I was astounded that the Northampton name that was recommended by the public did not get much of a discussion, and even got dissed by a board member. You ask a 6th grader a question, you're gonna get a 6th grade answer. So we're both trying to get students involved and do adult things, and then when they do, we diss them. I said that was inappropriate, and that word inappropriate got taken out of my remarks in the minutes. I would like to say, you can change the minutes for what you say, but I don't think it's appropriate to change the minutes for what I say. And I think that's inappropriate again. We'll see if we can get it in the minutes. And then, that's it. Thank you.
So I have one more comment, it's not related to the naming, but as you all know, during the capital planning process in which Wrightstown elementary was changed from a K-6 to K-4, a lot of students went over to Newtown Elementary, and part of that was closing or making space by closing the computer labs, making space for more classrooms. So if you're not aware, Mr. King is now feeling a shortfall in terms of Chromebooks and students being able to access and do work on those call them computers. And so the PTO is organizing a fundraising drive to meet that request. And I just want to point this out as that's a shortfall in terms of capital planning. If we close computer labs and then put things on carts and then have a situation where you've got more kids in the school and you can't accommodate what have been laid out by Mr. King as his needs. So I don't know if you are aware of that, But I was surprised by my elementary school PTO doing fundraising for that kind of thing.
All right, I'm not going to turn this into a public discussion, but we do have the director of IT here, so if something was said, I want the director of IT to
So
be able to respond.
he got 90 Chromebooks for the 30 desktops that he had. So that increased his capacity by 60 Chromebooks. He also got an additional 60 Chromebooks well above and beyond that were originally earmarked to go to Wrightstown because they weren't needed there because the students had moved to Newtown. So he ended up with a significantly larger number of machines than he had prior to the computer lab being taken.
So maybe somebody could talk to him and see what his need is.
I'd be happy.
I think we jumped to public comment ostensibly because of the, it was,
As a point of information, technology is on the academic standards meeting next.
yes. Thanks, Trevor. Two things. One, I think Wendy brought it up, maybe Mark brought it up, which is there are a number of things this board has to do in a short period of time. And I don't think that this board is going to be able to achieve all those things in the period of time that's confronting it. And so I would like, with advance notice, we have a meeting Monday, which we're going to talk about capital planning. And one of the items on our agenda, not for Monday, we're talking about repurposing Richboro Middle, and I forgot the other topic.
Targeted full-day kindergarten.
Full-day kindergarten. One of the other targets that we're talking about is what to do about closing an elementary school. Between closing an elementary school, repurposing Richboro Middle School, redistricting the district, we have a number of things that are going to happen. And I would like to propose, or have as a discussion item potentially on Monday, putting aside the notion of closing an elementary school in the short term and move right on to the redistricting of the schools we have.
So you don't want to discuss it tonight, you want to add it to the discussion?
I didn't make it as an item to discuss. There are other board members who might want to be there. We're at our capital planning meeting. Our superintendent is not here this evening. So I'd like to have that as a topic of discussion.
For clarity, our superintendent's doing professional development this week.
That's fine. He doesn't have to be there every meeting.
And it's a good point. There's another board member who's traveling on business, so.
So I guess where I'm going, Jerry, is I'm trying to push it to Monday to allow that to happen.
Agreed. That's
not
what I'm
to shut you down, but to allow that to happen.
I'm asking for it, so, as we talk about things that will go on for Monday, if we
I
include
will
as an
indicate-
item to.
Reach
Can
out
I
to
suggest
Anthony.
that it be put on as a topic for March 30th, since the public has been informed what the two topics for Monday are, and the topics of the upcoming meetings are not yet planned. I think that was going to be discussed on Monday.
Taking a page out of your former comments regarding the naming, this is for discussion, so we can have a feeling before we get onto the board meeting, maybe we get a feeling about what we're doing with it on Monday. It's a publicly advertised meeting. It's the place where we have to meet. You pointed out the other problem we had, which was we ran out of opportunities to discuss something which we would have to discuss publicly before we got to a public meeting. So
I agree with you. The
that's
more
why-
discussion, the better.
That's why I'm asking for it to be a discussion
Okay, well,
topic.
admittedly, I am not going to be there on Monday. I'd like to take part in that conversation. And also, it's been advertised what the agenda items are to be discussed on Monday. And we have 3 other capital planning meetings that have no topics assigned to them. We have a board meeting coming up on the 16th. We have other opportunities for discussion. So I'm just simply saying to add a new topic of discussion with basically less than 48 hours notice of business time is, I think.
Well, I understand that. I'm looking also at information on, and it's publicly known, and I'm not going to hide away from it. There are people who are running in campaigns now, and there are 4 board members who are up, and we have another board, and I have publicly said before that in the next year, probably, before December, I will be moving away from the district and potentially have to give up my seat. I have another board member who's now announced or communicated to local political groups that they will be leaving on or about June. So I have a number of disruptions to this board, potentially. That means that the current schedule is laid out to solve the many topics would have to would not be resolved by the board that's here, and would have new people potentially involved who would not have had the background. So I want to make sure we get the decisions made by the board, or we're going to cycle around. I pointed to Mark just because you've made you're right, we have a number of things in front of us. You don't have to agree with my take on it, but we have a number of things in front of us. And if we're not gonna achieve them all, we're just gonna keep cycling around. So I respect you're not gonna be there Monday. I'm sure we're not gonna solve it Monday.
I would, honestly, and I'm speaking with the chairman of that committee is not here.
He's aware that I'm bringing something.
He's aware, so Andy knows, is there a strong, Denise has a strong opinion.
I'll bring it up as a discussion on whether we.
Or not.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think it, none of us would expect that not to happen. So would you just, for the record, would you restate what it is you wish to discuss?
I want to discuss or propose, or discuss, I won't say propose. I want to discuss whether it is reasonable for us to set aside the notion of closing an elementary school at this time or in the short duration and move right on to the redistricting among the 10 elementary schools we have.
all right, any other board comment? I'm gonna say
I'm
this.
sorry, I do have a question. So
Okay.
Jerry, what you're proposing for discussion is not having any time in 2017 a vote on closing elementary schools?
Correct. Correct.
And when would you propose to have that? After redistricting?
I think we would redistrict, let's get the middle school closed, let's get other things repurposed. Here's my problem right now is I have a limited, this district, we're having a discussion, but yes, that's what I'm looking to do. I'll give my rationale for it.
And I have a public comment to, this wasn't said.
Go ahead.
First of all, does Dr. Frazier knows this? How much is he gonna have time to?
I don't think we should get into,
Fair.
Nancy, with all due respect,
I'll give
we
you a
get
chance
into
to-
a debate
I'm
now.
not gonna give you a chance to do questions. You can have a
Data, you
comment.
need data prepared to have this discussion. The only thing you have now is that there's 22 available classrooms to close the school, and where they would be and what they would cost. But there are other data items that need to be put on the table if you are or not going to. And I don't think you should have a discussion until you know that data has been presented. Things like busing, what would that save or cost? There's a lot of other items.
Well, I think it's reasonable. I think they're reasonable comments, Nancy, and I think it's reasonable to talk about, I thought the direction was to talk about this March 30th, understanding that Jerry's gonna bring it up on Monday.
Sure,
Because
yeah.
we would anyway, but we probably won't have a board discussion about it at a capital planning meeting until the 30th. I'm certain that Dr. Frazier and everyone, other people here are gonna, Dr. Frazier will listen to this and other people let Dr. Frazier know that that's the direction. So, but they're all good points, Nancy.
And this board is becoming more and more data driven. It's okay. We're not gonna make a decision without it. So with that, facilities meeting adjourned.